Okay, good morning everyone, good afternoon everyone, good evening everyone, wherever you are. Welcome to the tier list video that I promised some time ago. We are going to remake the tier list since it is the end of our first reign, so I thought it's a good time to take a look at what has changed. And yeah. Some people have told me they like the long videos, other people have said they prefer shorter videos. I'm not going to rush the tier list because I think it's important that you understand why I place certain dragons in certain tiers. But if you like the short videos, there might be a couple coming in the near future. Also a quick note, as you know, I always stream on Friday between 15 to 20 UTC. However, of course, for Christmas and for New Year's, I'm on holiday, so those streams will not take place. Okay, let's dive into the tier list. This time I will also make sure that I always click to the correct window, because last time I made one or two mistakes, I think, on the stream. So we have the tier list here. Okay, so we can see here this template has 24 images and was last modified on 26th of October. Now, first of all, I have created this template, okay? If you use this tier list to make your own tier list, please make sure that you give me a reference under your video or post, or, you know, however you use it. I don't mind preparing these tier lists. I did it for LOTR as well, and people just used it without giving me credit. I'm not a fan of that, so please give me credit if you use this. It actually takes a decent amount of time to get all of these pictures sorted, right? So you should be giving people credit where it is due. Now, let's start with the tier list. As I said, 26th October was the last time. This means it has been a while actually. Yeah, it's the 16th of December today, on the day of recording this video. So a couple of months have passed, right? There are no new dragons, so I don't need to add anything for now. And the big change was that they introduced habits. When I made my first tier list, there were no habits yet, right? So some of the dragons might get slightly different rankings. So we will start off with the setting here. So S are the best dragons that you should use in PvP. A are dragons that are average. They're not going to be very good. They're not going to be extremely bad. If you have them at high stars, I guess you should still use them. And then F are dragons that are very bad at PvP and PvE, and that you just should stay away from altogether. So all of the blue dragons, I've made up my mind about this before recording the video. All of the blue dragons are useless, okay? I'm not going to consider siege viability here. I've already recorded a stream where I explain how you should structure your armies and where each dragon for tiling and siege should go, so you can check out the corresponding stream, right? But for this video, blue dragons are not good. It doesn't matter how high stars you have them, or if you have a lot of blue cores for habit upgrades, don't use blue dragons. They are horrible. They have very bad damage rates. They have very bad stats. So these dragons are unusable at this game currently. I will post a couple of suggestions on the Game of Thrones Dragonfire Discord server, because I think it's a bit of a shame that, I mean, how many dragons is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? I think it's a bit of a shame that immediately at the start, 8 dragons are completely useless, right? That's just how it is right now, right? We're making the tier list realistic, but there is definitely the possibility to change some stuff and make them better, right? I actually think the bad stats they have are not even such a big problem if they adjust the base damage rates, but they haven't done so yet. So these dragons are useless. Don't use them. Very simple. Okay, Caraxes is fantastic. Actually, let's continue with the purples next. So the way I will make this tier list is I will evaluate the dragon at 10 stars. Okay, so I am going to comment maybe that a couple of dragons need 10 stars to be very, very good. But the tier list is basically like you're maxed out what is the best, what are the best dragons, right? And Daemoros is definitely in the S tier. And this is because, so if we switch the screen for a second, this is very simply because he has very, very, very strong habit upgrades. Okay, so if we take a look here at my Daemoros, he's nowhere near 10 stars yet, of course. He gets this at 10 stars, heftily reduces the damage by 37.5%. So we have players on our server who have already maxed everything. Okay, so I can comment on this very confidently. I have fought against these players, right? This habit is absolutely crazy. Yeah, this is a 37.5% random damage reduction that you cannot control for. I mean, ridiculous, right? You're like mitigating by almost 40%, which is really, really strong. Then he has Darkening Fear, reducing intelligence and instincts by 20% of one enemy in any lane until the end of combat. And this prioritizes the left flank. So a lot of people play tactical damage dealers in the left flank, right? Very strong title. Then also at the start of each round is a 30% chance to afflict one enemy in any lane with panic. Okay, this is kind of like a nice bonus, but not that important, although this damage also starts to stack up. But essentially reducing this by 20%, really, really strong, right? Then he has the Confusion chance, which is basically madness from Rise to War, right? You can get this to 40% confusion chance, yeah, the Shadow Flame. So this is 40% to trigger if you don't play a dragon that boosts the main command. 40% to trigger, 40% chance for madness. Again, very, very annoying. You can't really control for it, and it procs quite a few times from what I can tell. So, strong stuff. At the start of round 1, reduces intelligence by 20% of one enemy in any lane. So this is the intelligence reduction. This is very annoying for some armies as well. For example, Crimson is popular in the right flank. Some people have to play Caraxes in the right flank, who also does a lot of fire damage, right? So this title is also not that bad. And you see again, you have another panic instance. So that is why I said this damage starts to stack up, right? 60% panic chance. This is already 2 habits that inflict panic that does consistent damage without you really triggering your main command, right? So very, very strong. And then you have this as well. I mean, this is fine. Again, the stat changes I'm not really too bothered about, but basically this dragon at 10 stars, absolutely insane. Below 6 stars, I would not recommend it. It's just not very good. But at 10 stars, yeah, like I said, insanely strong. You have to put this dragon in the S tier because of that. Okay, then we have Feskar. Feskar is a very average dragon. There are some players who use him in horse teams, right? And I think that's okay. But he doesn't really have anything that makes it stand out, right, from the rest. I mean, the competition is quite fierce, especially if it's a purple dragon, because automatically the stats are worse than for the gold dragons, right? But he just doesn't have anything that is that amazing in my opinion. He has some damage mitigation for the first 2 rounds, okay. Some stat boost. This is nice, yeah. On every 3rd activation of the main command, you deal fire damage to 3 enemies. So this is not bad. If you combine this with burn, the damage rate is quite high at 120%, right? You can get this to 160 and 240%. So he will do good damage. But yeah, the calculated assault, 50% chance to deal tactical damage to the enemy with the most troops. So this only targets 1 enemy, right? And yeah, like I said, I think this is average. It's definitely a good dragon. If you have this dragon at high stars, you can play it. It will do decent amounts of damage. You just need to make sure that your main command triggers consistently, right? Which at 50% is not too difficult. This is a stat boost, and this I don't like. The stagger, it's okay, right? So calculated assault has to trigger, that's a 50% chance, and then you have, if you maximize this, a 65% chance to get stagger on one enemy, prioritizing warriors for 2 rounds. Obviously it's not bad, yeah, don't get me wrong. If we remind ourselves, the stagger prevents the targets from using attack modifier commands or launching basic attacks, so basically no basic attacks, right? But again, this is something, if I compare like this kit to the Daemoros kit, I think Daemoros is much, much stronger, right? So again, this is an average dragon, will do good damage at 6 stars, and you can fit him with horses, which is pretty nice. Horses are actually the troop type that can be pretty good if you structure your Caraxes around it, right? So yeah, not a bad dragon. Like I said, average. I think there is a player who has him at 8 or 9 stars on our server. I haven't seen this one at 10 stars yet, but just like I said, my intuition, it's an average dragon at 10 stars, and there are definitely better ones to use or to level up. So that's why this dragon is in the average tier. Okay, Rhysarion is fantastic. If you don't know this yet, I think you haven't been playing the game or paying attention. Basically, Rhysarion is one of the strongest purple dragons. And can be played in really any army. Yeah, I've shown last time on my stream, you don't really need the troop boost to be effective in fights. It's much more important to play dragons that actually have good kits. Okay, and this is a perfect example, right? So Rhysarion is comparable to Mouth of Sauron from Rise to War because of this habit. Ebbing Fury at the start of round 1, reduce damage dealt by all enemies and allies by 27% for 3 rounds. At the start of round 4, apply recovery to 3 allies in any lane. And if you boost this, this goes up to minus 55% and 50% recovery. Essentially what this means is in the first 3 rounds, you don't take any damage, and in round 4 you heal yourself, which means if the enemy does not have a healer, in round 4, you start the fight with essentially full troops. The enemy will be depleted by around 20 to 25% already if they have a similar team to yours, right? So you have an advantage from round 4 onwards, right? And this is why it's also really good for free-to-plays, because you don't need to level this up. You already get pretty good value out of it at the 1 star, right? But in essence, this is one of the strongest commands in the game. This is a stat increase. Again, I've said that I'm not that interested in the stat increases. Dawnsong applies recovery. So this is very nice, because if you have him at 6 stars, he's a healer himself as well. Which means if you play him, for example, with Malachite, you have a double heal in the army and very, very high damage mitigation in the first 3 rounds. And if you put a glass cannon into this team, like Caraxes or any of the other dragons who do good damage, like Kalspire, right? You have a really scary army. Yeah, this is again recovery to 2 other allies, and the recovery rate is 60%, enhanced by intelligence. Okay, so quite simple to understand. He also has surprisingly pretty decent damage. Physical damage rate is 90% and fire damage rate is 90%. This damage rate is pretty high compared to some of the other damage rates that purple dragons have, and yeah, he hits 2 enemies, so 40% chance to activate this. Very, very good habit. And of course, you can upgrade this habit as well to 120% recovery rate, which is very, very strong. I don't have Rhysarion at adult yet. I hope to get it soon. It's definitely on my priority list, right? Yeah, then we have Unbroken Devotion. Again, this is a nice habit that synergizes with the rest of his kit, and if you pair him with Malachite, both benefit from these recovery received increases, right? And at 10 stars, I actually think the 10 stars is not that important, but essentially you can get a 100% chance to increase initiative by 20%, and grant the damage mitigation, which is called resistance in this game, to one other ally within adjacency for 2 rounds. So this dragon is very, very strong. Again, if you have followed my streams, you have seen this. There is really no surprise, and he is definitely in the S tier. Okay, let's continue with Shadowsong. Shadowsong is a bit difficult. He's either in F or in A, I think. I don't like Shadowsong this much, to be honest, because he just has a too low % chance to do damage. Okay? And what do I mean by this? Well, if we take a look here at Shadowsong, right? Here we go. The main command is actually quite strong. So you have a chance to deal fire damage to 2 enemies in any lane. The damage rate is 90%. And if they have panic, the damage rate is 135%, right? And at 10 stars, you have the 50% chance to deal physical damage to 1 enemy in any lane with a damage rate of 80%, and you inflict some burn. And you can do the same to another enemy. So this sounds very good. But the main problem is the 35% chance. This is a very, very low % chance for this command to trigger. And the problem is, it doesn't trigger that often, yeah? And all of these, in the main command, all of these effects are tied to the main command proccing, okay? And so, of course, this is a big problem, right? You want to play dragons that proc the main command often so that you can get value out of it, okay? His habits are not bad. Reduce instinct and initiative for 2 rounds. Again, 2 rounds. I prefer to have this active for the entire fight. I don't think it's too crazy if this dragon had that. He also has this. I think this is a very good habit. So at the start of rounds 1 to 3, increase fire damage received and physical damage received. Okay. Right flank and left flank. Very, very strong. Yeah. Affects half each round. So you have this for 3 rounds, I believe. Yeah. So this is a very good, again, this is a very good habit, but it's just the problem that his main command is not very consistent, okay? And the 6 stars, I actually don't like the 6 stars at all. The vulnerable increases the damage, right? If we take a look here, increase the target's damage received by 15%. Yes, sure, but it would be nicer, again, this is tied to main command's proccing, right? Because if the main command doesn't proc, the only damage you have is the basic attack, and that's not enough to do well against players who structure their army well. Now this is a stat increase, not relevant, and we looked at this already. This is not bad. Again, the problem of this dragon is the low % chance for the main command to trigger. If this was 40%, Shadowsong would be really, really strong, yeah? Or 45%, whatever. But 35%, it's too low, and the 6 star is also not that good in my opinion. So Shadowsong goes in the average. We can put him in the average tier. Actually, reading these titles, I mean, I think actually he might be that some of the habits are better than Feskar's, but Feskar has a 50% chance to trigger, right? So immediately there is this percentage problem. So that is why Shadowsong is in the average tier. Tashix. Okay, so Tashix is a hotly debated dragon. I like Tashix. I've played around with him a lot in a lot of different armies. I think he has great potential. Yeah. I think just people don't play him correctly. So what does Tashix do? Tashix has a 50% chance, high % chance to trigger the main command, right? To gain 1 stack of Mirage. And then deal fire damage to 2 enemies within adjacency. The damage rate is 60%, which is relatively low, I would say. Now this stack, what does this stack of Mirage do? You can stack it 10 times, and each stack of Mirage increases your fire damage dealt by 2% until the end of combat. So essentially, Tashix gets stronger as the fight goes on. Okay. Now what's cool here? He has some interesting habits. So here he reduces tactical damage dealt by 22%. Targeting the enemy with the highest instincts all the time if you maximize this. This is not bad, honestly, because a lot of the tactical damage dealers obviously have high instincts, right? If this hits a Zivern, for example, Zivern's damage is reduced by 22%. This is very significant, okay? Or if there is someone playing Kalspire or Vhagar, right? All of these tactical damage dealers, they will suffer greatly from this habit. Then we have intelligence increases. Okay, again, the stat increases, I don't really care about them. The 6-star is as follows. At the start of each round, 25% chance to gain 1 stack of Mirage. So the 6-star basically adds another instance of Mirage chance, right? So it's another instance of you being able to stack this. Now 25% is not very high. That's why they added some more stuff, right? At the start of each round, if you have 4 or more stacks of Mirage, there's a 50% chance to inflict 3 enemies in any lane with Weakened. Okay. Now, this is reducing the damage that the enemies deal. Okay, if we take a look here, it should be explained here actually. I think they forgot to add this to the main command. But essentially, Weakened just reduces the damage they deal by 15%. The problem is, again, percent chance is very, very low here, even if you upgrade this. The 6-star is not that strong, sadly. Yeah, it could be a lot better. This 25% chance, of course, it triggers sometimes, but again, this is not like some of the other 6-star titles we saw that add another instance of high damage, for example, right? So, not that great. This is not that great in my opinion. At least this is against all enemies and until the end of combat, so I prefer this over something like 2-round reduction, right? And then the 10 stars is absolutely insane. So the 10 stars is at the start, so you gain another chance to stack the Mirage, and if you have 7 or more stacks of Mirage, you deal 150% fire damage to the enemy with the most troops. So at 10 stars, this will be one of the highest hitting dragons, without a doubt, because this essentially is like similar to an execution, right? It also means at 7 or more stacks you already have plus 14% fire damage dealt, right? So this is guaranteed to trigger after you have stacked the Mirage sufficiently. And this is really, really strong, yeah? Now again, I have a problem with the 25% chance, right? I don't think this is good, but essentially you're in a situation where you have a 50% chance to gain 1 stack of Mirage, then you have a 25% chance to stack Mirage from the 6, and you have a 25% chance to stack Mirage from the 10. So this helps you to stack Mirage a little bit faster. Again, percentage could be a bit higher. I've checked the battle reports, this is how it works. And if you pair this guy with Rhysarion, for example, and a healer, right? So Tashix is a great glass cannon at 10 stars. The idea is you take basically no damage in the first 3 rounds, then you have heals to keep you going, and you give Tashix time to stack Mirage and then proc this habit, right? So I think Tashix is very, very good at 10 stars. And I think, like I said, I like commands that trigger often. The damage rate here should be a little bit higher, so this is why I will put this dragon in the average tier, because of the low damage rate that he has initially, because of the fact that only very few dragons work well with him together. You have to structure your army carefully around it, and because the real push at 10 stars takes a lot of investment for a purple dragon, right? So something like Rhysarion is much more easily playable at lower stars. And the Daemoros, like I said, I think Daemoros has much better habits in general than Tashix. Because Tashix is really getting carried by the 10 stars, right? The way I am arguing it. So I would put Tashix in the average tier, but he's definitely, I would put him above these 2 dragons for sure. I think he's a bit undervalued currently, and if I get him to 10 stars, which could happen because the game loves to give me 100 and 1000 Tashix pulls, right? If I get him to 10 stars, maybe I will consider putting him in the S tier as well, but for now I think he belongs in this category. Okay, next we have Vaeldra. So Vaeldra is very, very interesting. I've had lots of different views about him. I can tell you a 10-star Vaeldra is insane to face. Okay? And this is because, again, of the 10-star habit. So at the start of rounds 1 to 3, reduce your physical damage received by 35%. Basically, you take no physical damage. Also, there is a 40% chance, which gets increased to a 100% chance if you upgrade this, to taunt all enemies. Each effect lasts until the end of the round. So why is this so insane? It means if you pair Vaeldra with Caraxes and Syrax, for example, Caraxes and Syrax are 100% protected in the first 3 rounds due to this taunt, right? And Vaeldra basically takes no damage because he reduces the physical damage by 35%, which is very, very high. Okay, so this habit is insane. It might be one of the strongest support habits in the game. Now, what does the rest of his kit look like? So if we look at the 8-star habit, at the start of rounds 1 to 3, increase the physical damage dealt of one ally, so this prioritizes the left flank, and the tactical damage dealt of one ally, prioritizing the right flank by 20% until the end of combat. So why is this nice? Well, Syrax, who this dragon pairs nicely with, has tactical damage, right? You get this to up to 40%. Physical damage is always good. I think I don't have to talk about it, right? So this is also very, very good if you maximize this habit, right? So we can see he gets really strong later on. At 6 stars, I think he is mediocre because the command only has a 30% chance to activate, and this is really, really bad, right? 30% chance, I think it's one of the worst percentage chances in the game. And this does physical damage with an acceptable damage rate and tactical damage with a low damage rate, but to 2 enemies. The key thing is the taunt is linked to this main command. Okay, so if you have him at 6 stars, you have a very low percentage chance to protect your army. Now this habit is active when there is a taunt, right? So when you afflict an enemy with taunt, increase the damage received by 6% for 2 rounds. This gets increased to 12%, links insanely well with the 10-star, links very well with the 8-star. So this is why you can see this is a typical example of a dragon. I think it's very weak 6 stars and below, but if you have this guy at 10 stars, absolutely crazy. One of the scariest dragons you can face for sure, right? And these are just these are some vanilla habits, damage reduction, some slight damage reduction. Again, this dragon, insane at 10 stars. Since we evaluate the maximum potential of a dragon, I am going to put him in the S tier, because like I said, 10 stars, it is crazy. Below that, I would not play a Vaeldra over a Tashix, Feskar, or Shadowsong. Below 8 stars or 10 stars because of this very, very bad command percent chance activation, right? So actually I would say I would not play a Vaeldra below 10 stars, yeah, but at 10 stars you have to play him in your main team, yeah. I think that's a very, very fair statement to make. Okay, lastly we arrive at my favorite dragon, Zivern. Again, if you have watched my videos, you know this already. I'm a huge Zivern fan. I think Zivern is fantastic. One of the best, if not the best, purple dragon in the game. Or maybe even overall. And this is because Zivern has Messenger's Call. Okay? And Messenger's Call increases the command activation chance of the main commands by 6% at maximum. This is very, very significant because suddenly a dragon like Caraxes get the main command much more often than before, right? If this goes from 35 to 41%, you get this a few times per fight, right? Very, very strong. The same for something like Venator. If you pair Venator with a Zivern, suddenly you get a lot of double strikes, and the title can stack, and the title can do damage itself, right? Lots of examples. Essentially, whatever army you play, this habit is really strong. Yeah, really, really strong. In PvE, in PvP, whatever you do, I recommend you get a Zivern. Yeah. Like I said, in my opinion, fantastic dragon, has to be played. This is a stat change, not that interesting. 6 stars is a huge damage boost because you add fire damage. So if we read this, there's a 45% chance to deal tactical damage to 2 enemies with a damage rate of 70%. There's a 40% chance to inflict panic. And at 6 stars, you add a 70% chance to deal fire damage to 2 enemies in any lane. Now the important thing is you can upgrade this to 100%, which means every time your main command triggers, you are assured tactical damage and fire damage. Which means Zivern is a great damage dealer, and he is a support because of this habit. So he fills multiple roles, right? As you can see, I've already started to upgrade him. This is one of the dragons I will maximize first, for sure. So fantastic, fantastic dragon. Okay, this title is not that crazy. At the start of combat, reduce physical and tactical damage received by 3% of 2 other allies in any lane until the end of combat. Now this is nice again because it's until the end of combat. You maximize this, you get 7%, but again, nothing too crazy. And the 10-star Silent Shade has a 15% chance to inflict overwhelm on the targets of its tactical damage effect for 2 rounds. The chance is doubled if the target is afflicted with vulnerable. Now, this habit is unfortunately not very strong. Yeah, Zivern is one of the few dragons where the 10-star is quite insignificant in my opinion. Of course, the overwhelm is not bad, yeah? It prevents the targets from using active commands. But this is not something that, you have to have in order to do well in the fight. However, because he already has 2 habits, which in my opinion are crazy strong, right? Like assured fire damage every time the main command procs with 85% damage rate, and you have this command activation chance increased by 6% for 2 other allies. This dragon is just, like I said, I think this dragon is a must-have, right? So this dragon goes in the S tier, and like I said, I think this is my favorite dragon. I will put him. We can put him here because all of these are very strong. We will just keep it alphabetical in this section. All of these are strong, and yeah. I just realized I skipped Velar, but that's fine. We will cover Velar as well. So this is the tier list for now. Okay, so let's talk about Velar. Velar I am not a fan of for multiple reasons, right? If we look here at Velar, there we go. So biggest issue, 30% chance to deal tactical damage to 3 enemies with a very low damage rate. Okay. This is a horrible main command. This doesn't do anything, essentially. And this is where his kit falls apart, right? Low damage rate, only 30% chance to trigger. It does hit 3 enemies, but it's not really significant. Like, this isn't going to do a lot of damage. And then you have this 35% chance to get advantage, which basically you will never get, because the percent chance for this advantage is so low, like, you can safely ignore it. Now this habit is interesting. You increase the tactical damage of 1 ally in the Vanguard slot, which is good for Vhagar or for Malachite, for example. Fortunately, like I said, this is the only good part about his kit. This is a stat increase, not very useful. Whirlwind has a 15% chance to grant first strike to 3 allies in any lane and inflict slow. So this is just some, again, very low percent chance to inflict some crowd control effects. This is stat increase, not interesting. And then at 10 stars, Whirlwind applies recovery to 3 allies in any lane, and you have a cleanse. But the problem is, this is just, again, one of the dragons that doesn't work at all in my opinion, because this 30% chance, everything depends on this 30% chance for the main command to trigger, and you're just not gonna get it consistently. Yeah. So Velar, unfortunately, he is a purple dragon that I will put in the trash tier. and I definitely stand behind that. I don't think this dragon is useful right now, and I would not play this dragon. Of course, it's still better than all of the blue ones, right? But this is a trash dragon. I would not focus on it. Okay, and these are all of the purples done. Now let's move on to the golds. Let's do Caraxes first. Okay, Caraxes is quite a simple one, I think. I think Caraxes is great. Fantastic dragon. There's a 35% chance to deal fire damage to 3 enemies in any lane. Damage rate is 80%. You can increase this when you have first strike to 120%. Now I will say this is also a relatively low percent chance for the main command to trigger. But if you structure your army correctly, you will get this command to trigger quite often. Yeah, basically I get like at least 3 main command procs of this every fight, and this is more than enough because he hits 3 enemies for 80%, right? He's also good because he increases his fire damage to 25%, right? So if this triggers once, it's gonna do a lot of damage. You add a little bit of extra damage at the adult level because you get the burn, right? Slow I don't think is that important, but you know, you add a little bit of extra damage. And if we look at his at the other part of his kit, so these are not that bad because it's until the end of combat, so you get a minus 13% intelligence and instinct reduction, right? 100% chance for this to trigger. You reduce the physical damage dealt by 11% of 3 enemies, so this is reducing the auto attacks. And then he has some recovery as well at 10 stars. So at the start of each round, for each enemy that retreated in the previous round, this means you killed an enemy dragon, you apply recovery to yourself. So they changed this in the last tier list. This habit was different. Yeah. Additionally, for each enemy that is below 50% max troop capacity, increase your fire damage dealt by 8%. This is really the important part, right? So you get 8% here. You get 25% here, that's 33%. This procs 3 times to 4 times per fight easily. He's a great glass cannon. Very reliable, has good damage. Now, the fire damage does have some heavy counters, yeah, you have to keep this in mind. But he's one of the, in my opinion, he's one of the most consistent high damage dealers that are currently in the game. Okay, so Caraxes is great. Yeah. That's why he goes in the S tier. Okay. Let's take a look at Crimson next. So, if you watch the streams, you also know I like Crimson. I have changed my views a little bit on this dragon. So, he has a 40% chance to deal physical damage and fire damage. Unfortunately, the damage rate is only 65%. Okay. So, this is where he is a little bit weaker than some of the other gold dragons. I like my gold dragons to do damage, yeah. And this guy is more of a crowd control. He has a stun, right? 25% chance to inflict the target with stun for 2 rounds. At 5 stars, this is not high enough to justify playing the stun, yeah. Now, what is interesting about him? So he has a great matchup into Caraxes because he reduces the fire damage dealt by 25% at maximum, okay, which is very significant. He can also boost his damage slightly to 13%, not that horrible. This synergizes nicely with Vhagar. I covered this in the last video. Unfortunately, the weakened chance is only 24% at the maximum, yeah. Now, if you double it with the taunt, it's at 48%, and that's when it starts to become playable, right? But you have to have the taunt. It does afflict 3 enemies, right? So this is, by no means is this a weak title. It just means that currently, if you play Crimson in your army, you are missing some damage, okay? That's the fact of the meta. And in the early game, this can be annoying by getting stuck in draws, right? And things like this. So, yeah. I like the 8-star a lot. At the start of each round, increase physical and fire damage received by 10% for all enemies above 75% max troop capacity, right? So you increase your damage to up to 20%. and you reduce the recovery received by 40%, which can be very good into Rhysarion and Malachite teams, right? And then the 10-star is where he really starts to shine, because the Bloodscale Terror reduces the target's instincts and initiative by 15% for 2 rounds, but the key point is the chance to apply stun is increased to 35%, and you can get this to 50%. Okay, so this is where he reliably starts to stun, right? If you pair this with Zivern, you increase the main command chance to 46%, right? You will start to see stuns. Now, I like Crimson because he's a counter dragon, he's very flexible. I don't think he is the best dragon in the game. I don't think I think there are better options for people to play. The game likes to give me Crimson relics, so I've really explored a lot with this dragon, and I still think it's very strong. I'm not going to rate this dragon in the average tier, because I think there are far worse options, right? So Crimson is still in the S tier. I am going to put him here below these purple dragons on purpose, because I do think he's at the lower end of this tier. But again, he can be used to counter stuff, which will become relevant in future seasons, right? You currently don't see this, but in future seasons, this will be very important. Okay, next we have Kalspire, so let's take a look at Kalspire. Kalspire is very strong. I don't have this dragon at high star, sadly, but this guy is also a glass cannon that does a lot of damage, right? So the main command, 40% chance to deal tactical damage with a damage rate of 155%. Very high. 30% chance to afflict the target and one other enemy within adjacency with bleed. Extra damage, right? Nice. Stat increase, okay. This is some stat adjustment. Again, yeah, I don't consider this to be super relevant. Then at 6 stars he gets a big upgrade because he also does physical damage now. Now the damage rate here is not that high. Okay, you have to be careful. It's good, and I mean, you can get this to 100%, right? This is where he really starts to shine. But at the base it's just 50% to one enemy within adjacency that was not the target of your basic attack. And you get Panic as well, which scales of your tactical damage, right? 50% chance at maximum. So this is a dragon that does a lot of damage, both tactical and physical. Okay? This is not that important. At the start of round 1, reduce the damage received by 35. This is kind of weird. Yeah, so you reduce your damage received by 35% for 2 rounds, but you stun yourself for 2 rounds. I don't really understand this, yeah? At the start of round 3, reduce the physical damage dealt of the enemy with the highest strength, the tactical damage dealt of the enemy with the highest instinct, and the fire damage of the enemy with the highest intelligence by 30% for 3 rounds. Now, obviously, this is insane, right? So essentially, the goal is you take little damage in the first 2 rounds, and then you start winning the fight. I still think this command is weird. I don't really understand how this fits with other gold dragons. Of course you can play Seasmoke with the cleanse. Of course you can play Rhysarion to buy time, right? To wait the first 3 rounds. But yeah, I think this could be designed better. Yeah. Nonetheless, Kalspire very strong, super damage dealer. Yeah, there's not a lot to talk about really. Very consistent command proc chance as well. So of course, Kalspire is very good. Now I will put him above Caraxes simply because he has physical and tactical damage in his main command. Caraxes is very focused on the fire damage, right? So, like I said, there are some counters. Okay, next we have Malachite. Malachite is great. Most of the gold dragons, as you realize, have some great uses. He's a healer. He does good damage. 105% damage rate, recovery. What's really cool about him is he gives a fire damage boost if you play him in the Vanguard slot. Okay, so you increase your recovery and instincts, your recovery dealt and your instincts, and the fire damage is increased by 16% of the ally deployed in the left flank. I think this is one of the strongest Vanguard leadership titles, by the way, and it's very unique. I think he is the only one who has this actually, if I'm not mistaken. Or there's only like a couple of dragons who have this. This just synergizes with the recovery, right? So this is nice. You can increase the recovery by 40%. You have a chance to grant advantage. You get this to 35%. This is not bad because Warden's Rally has a 50% chance, so this happens quite often, right? Then we have some stat adjustments, not interesting. And this is what I really like. So Warden's Rally increases strength and initiative by 25% of one other ally within adjacency. Also, there is a 75% chance to grant the target double strike. Each effect lasts for 2 rounds. So this, I've said this in my last tier list video already. I'm not changing my mind. I think this is probably the strongest, or at least one of the strongest habits in the game, right? Because double strike means 2 basic attacks, and if you play a team that is well designed, you do a lot of damage with double attacks, right? Every basic attack is fantastic, and if you get 2 for 2 rounds, remember this is for 2 rounds, right? So really, really strong. High command percentage chance. I mean, Malachite is one of the strongest dragons in the game for sure. Like Kalspire essentially. I'm just gonna put him here, but you can switch these around if you want. Okay, next we have Seasmoke. Seasmoke is not bad. Oh, let me just quickly switch to Chrome. So I put Malachite in the S tier, like I said, and you can switch these around if you want. But yeah, very, very strong, right? We have Seasmoke now. So Seasmoke is a good dragon. He's not, in my opinion, Seasmoke is not that special because the only thing he really has is the cleanse, right? So this is a stat increase, okay. If you pair this with Caraxes or another fire damage dealer, obviously it's not bad. But stat increases, I've said this before, they're just not that relevant in these types of games. Yeah, it's nice to have. This is also a stat adjustment, okay. Now, Cleansing Wrath, what does this do? It's a 40% chance to deal fire damage, only a 60% damage rate, the same as Tashix, right? You cleanse a positive status effect from the target you hit, and you cleanse 1 negative effect from 1 ally in any lane. And this prioritizes allies afflicted with a negative effect. Now, it's not bad, but basically, as you can see here, you will start to miss damage, right? 60% damage rate is too low. Percent chance is fine, but if you play this dragon, you need to play 2 other dragons that do a lot of damage, which is not that easy. Yeah. At 6 stars, at the start of combat, reduce your damage received by 12% for 3 rounds. This is very nice because it only affects your army, right? So you still do the normal damage and you get 25% less for 3 rounds. And at the start of round 4, increase the activation chance of Cleansing Wrath by 10%. This effect lasts until Cleansing Wrath activates. So again, by no means is this a bad title. Again, you can see that you will miss damage, right? So this dragon only has the 60% fire damage rate. This is also very good. The first time each ally is below 25% max troop capacity at the start of a round, reduce the damage received by 40% until the end of combat. Very, very strong, okay. And we have the Cleansing Wrath has a 50% chance to deal physical damage with a damage rate of 60% and cleanse 1 positive effect from a second enemy within adjacency. If successful, there's a 25% chance to apply these effects again to a third enemy in any lane. Now here is where you add a little bit of extra damage. 60% rate for physical damage is not great, yeah. I've seen 7-star, 8-star Seasmokes getting out damaged by purple dragons. I understand that his role is that of a support. But there's just so many dragons who do more damage and also have great support titles. Yeah, like for example Malachite. Malachite does more damage than Seasmoke and has great support titles or habits. Yeah. Now, there is an interesting army. So you can pair Seasmoke with Rhysarion, for example, right? And Rhysarion, the the negative status effect that is afflicted to your army as well can be cleansed by Seasmoke. Okay, so this is, I talked about this army previously, this is interesting. The problem is that this doesn't happen very often because there are a couple of negative status effects you face if you fight a competent enemy. Okay, you're not just gonna have the Rhysarion one. So in theory, this is cute. In practice, doesn't work that often. So my problem with this dragon is so basically what I'm saying, right? The problem is Malachite has 105% tactical damage rate here, and he gives the basic attacks which also do damage, right? This has to be considered. The Seasmoke cleanses. It reduces damage massively. Don't get me wrong. This is a very good habit. But the problem is he's a support whose damage is just lacking a bit. They could change this damage rate to 75% and he would already be infinitely better, right? Because the main command, it procs often. And this is also not bad, yeah? You get it to a 100% damage chance at maximum. But again, 80% here would be far more reasonable if we compare this to some of the other gold dragons. Now, I'm not going to put him in the average tier because I don't think he is average, but he will go, I think somewhere here is good. Okay, next we have Syrax. I have changed my opinion on Syrax. Unfortunately, I don't think this dragon is very good. The main command is a 45% chance to deal 70% tactical damage and fire damage. And there's a 50% chance to grant one other ally in any lane first strike. Now this wouldn't be bad. The problem is 6 stars is no extra damage. You just increase the activate chance of active commands at 8% at the maximum level. If you compare this to Zivern, this is much worse, because Zivern gives you 6% to 2 allies at the start of combat, which stays until the end. Syrax only gives you the 8% activation chance if the Blazing Fury triggers and only to one ally with the least troops. Okay, so this, I'm not going to say it's bad, I still think it's playable and you increase the active command chance. Yeah, so this is good, but this should be at the start of combat. This should not be tied to the main command. Yeah, that's what makes this weak. And the recovery is fine, 55% is quite low, right? If we compare this to Malachite or some of the others that heal. For a gold dragon, 55% recovery is low. And the amount of recovery is increased if an enemy is afflicted with slow to 82.5%. I would cut this last part, I will put the 82.5% here. He would already be a lot better, or that this dragon would already be a lot better. Now, again, you get this to 8%, recovery rate 110%, with slow 165%. Again, the slow, like, it's just way too inconsistent to get good value out of this, right? And at 10 stars, Blazing Fury has a 40% chance to cleanse 2 negative effects from the ally with the least troops. You can increase this to 100% chance. I think this is very good. Also reduce the target's damage received by 50% for 2 rounds if they are below 25% max troop capacity. I actually think this is a lot better than the Seasmoke cleanse, because you can get this cleanse chance to 100%, and this is already 45%. So compared to Seasmoke, I still think this guy is better, or I think it's a woman, right, or a lady. But yeah, like I said, see, I don't think he is this dragon is as crazy anymore as people initially thought, and I don't think you have to pair Caraxes with this dragon. Again, Caraxes 10 star was changed, so there is less synergy there, in my opinion. And Syrax has a very strong 10 star habit, but 6 star and below, I'm not so sure this dragon is very strong at this point in time. Okay, so we are going to put Syrax in the S tier, of course, and I will put him above Seasmoke. I do think Crimson is actually a bit more flexible than Seasmoke now that I think about it, so we can leave it like this. Okay, next we have Venator. Venator, yeah. I have commented on this before. He has a very, very low percent chance to trigger his main command. You can play Zivern and boost this significantly. I just don't like dragons that have low percent command, main command chances. And the other problem I have with this dragon, if he has the double strike, which is really rare, the damage rate of the physical damage that this title by itself does is 30%. I mean, come on, this is not good. Yeah. Now, some interesting things about the kit. So he can reduce the intelligence by 60% of hunters. Okay, this is very significant. This is a significant stat decrease, right? You reduce Caraxes damage by 60%. I think Tashix is also a hunter, right? Yeah. So Tashix fire damage reduced by 60%. Hard counter for fire damage. This is very good. At the start of combat, increase your physical damage dealt by 25%. Very strong habit. When you have double strike, Pharaoh strike deals 4 additional instances of physical damage. This is not good. I don't like this title. You can get the damage rate to 50%, but again, this is tied to having double strike, which is a very low probability chance, like I already said. At the start of combat, increase the physical damage received by 8% of one opposing enemy until the end of combat. This is good, 16%, right? So these other habits are actually very good. He is one of those dragons where I think his main command is not very good, but some of the habits he has are very good, right? So this is interesting. I think he's probably the only gold dragon of who I think that, right? Each round, if you are below 50% max troop capacity, there's a 20% chance to deal physical damage with a damage rate of 50% and overwhelm 2 enemies in any lane for 3 rounds. Prioritizes hunters. Okay, so I think this dragon is kind of similar to Crimson, where it's very dependent on counters, yeah? I don't like Venator as just cookie cut and play, right? I think he needs the army to be very carefully structured around it. And again, the main command is what really turns me off here. I will still put it in the S tier because, you know, if you have this dragon, you should play it. They have introduced the habits now. The habits make this dragon a lot better than it was, right? Because, like I already showed, of these habits that you can now increase to 60%, right? Or this you can increase to 16%, this you can increase to 25%. So obviously it's not bad, yeah, but this is one of those gold dragons. I'm just not too excited about it, and it's a counter dragon, yeah. It's used to counter specific army compositions, and so he goes below Crimson, right? Similar value here. Now, I will note that before the Venator lovers jump at me, I know that Crimson has a lower damage dealt reduction, right? So this is only 25, but you have to consider this is damage dealt. So the damage dealt is 25%, and Venator has an intelligence dealt or intelligence stat reduction. Okay, so in my opinion, this at maximum will still reduce the fire damage more than Venator's intelligence reduction. Okay, that's my view on this. Just so that you know, that's why I place the Crimson slightly above the Venator, and the Crimson also has a stun, right? So that's a little bit more generic. You don't necessarily can just use this into like 1 to 2 armies or whatever. Okay, and lastly we have Vhagar. Vhagar, I'm just going to do it quickly because I like Vhagar a lot. I think Vhagar is one of the strongest dragons still. Nothing has changed in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, what is there really to say about it? We can take a look at his habits as well. Massive damage reduction. He even increases the recovery received with this habit as well. I haven't made use of this yet, but there are some interesting ideas, right? So you massively reduce physical and fire damage by 30% if you maximize this. Then he increases physical damage in the right flank by 25%, or she, the dragon, increases the physical damage dealt by 25% at max. Really, really strong. Makes a large difference in fights. Okay, I've tested this already. The 6-star is one of the weakest habits he has, so Fiery Bonds has a 15% chance to grant advantage and inflict weakened. Not a fan of this. Not a fan of this at all. I think it's way too low percent chance and not very significant in the fights. At the start of combat, increase the tactical damage received by 25% of one opposing enemy until the end of combat. This is obviously not bad, right? If you play this with Zivern, or this dragon itself also does tactical damage with a damage rate of 120%, 50% chance to trigger the main command, and you have a 50% chance to taunt 3 enemies, right? This is also a key aspect of why I like Vhagar a lot, is because of the taunt, okay? And the chance is increased to 100% against targets afflicted with burn. This is why I think playing Vhagar, Zivern and Caraxes together is very strong right now, with ranged troops or with horse troops, cavalry, right? Even if you don't fit all of the troops, this is an army that synergizes very well. You can of course also go the heal route with Vhagar, Malachite and a glass cannon like Tashix or Venator or Kalspire, right? Actually maybe not Venator, Kalspire, Caraxes, that's also fine. I just like to play this dragon with Zivern and Caraxes. I think it's very good. Yeah. So this basically increases the damage of Zivern and of Vhagar itself, right? If you hit the enemy that has the tactical damage received increase. And then you have the Skyward Titan, which is a crazy 10-star title, right? At the start of each round, 30% chance to gain 1 stack of Bulwark, max 5 stacks, until the end of combat. Each stack of Bulwark increases your strength and instincts by 5%. Key point here is, the first time you have 3 or more stacks of Bulwark at the start of your turn, deal physical and tactical damage to 3 enemies in any lane, and this damage rate goes to 225%. Okay, this is insane. Percent chance is low, of course, so you will get this late in the fight. You only need 3 stacks. Okay, so you can get this, and this is not tied to the main command, so you have this chance every round, right? Every round a 30% chance. So Vhagar is fantastic. He definitely belongs in the S tier. Yeah. Okay, so this is the updated tier list. Now again, you will notice there are a lot of dragons in the S tier, right? It's just because a lot of the dragons we have access to are very strong right now, or are very bad, right? So S and F are the 2 tiers that are mostly populated, and you have a few average dragons. I think these still belong here. I explained why when I covered the dragon, right? These have potential, but they are just not the best in doing something, right? If we want to make this a little bit more even, I would be alright with putting these guys in this tier. Maybe this looks a little bit better, right? Then it's a little bit more evenly split. I still think all of these dragons are much better than these other ones, right? If they are gold, they immediately have higher stats, right? It's very likely they have higher damage rates as well, though this is not always the case. But I think just to to conclude, I think this is an acceptable switch up here. And then we have the S, A, and F tiers relatively evenly populated. And this is my tier list. A couple of things changed, right? Because of the habits, like I said, because of some testing against maximum dragons, and I think this came out really well. Now the order here, if we really want to narrow down the order, I like this so far. I think Vaeldra is maybe the strongest one at 10 stars, followed by Zivern, Rhysarion, and Daemoros, yeah? Then in this tier, I am okay with putting Venator at the top. Actually, Crimson at the top, followed by Venator, followed by these two are interchangeable, honestly. Like, both of these are fine. Syrax and Seasmoke basically do the same thing, right? So, yeah. This is fine, I think. Tashix, Feskar, and Shadowsong. And the trash tier, we already did it anyway. So the Velar is the only one that stands out because of the stats. The other ones are just unplayable, right? And this is the tier list. If you have any comments, questions, post it. I will read through them when I have time. And don't forget to give the video a like and a thumbs up. These videos always take a long time to make, yeah, just because I really cover everything, right? And I try to do it to the best of my ability. So there's a lot of thought behind this. Yeah, I know that you guys and girls, you just see the tier list, and maybe some people will just skip to the end and look at this picture. But I've tested with all of these dragons extensively, yeah, which takes a lot of time. And you really have to do that in order to see if your theoretical thoughts link to the practical reality, right? And yeah, this is why I appreciate the likes, the comments, the support. Once again, shout outs to my channel members, Atzel and Isaac, right? Great guys. They always give me tips on how to structure my streams and my videos and what I should cover. They have donated extensively already as well, so maybe we can get a couple more channel members involved. There is a Dragon Pit section on the ORDR Discord, which is only accessible for channel members. And there will be more focus on channel member specific content in the future. But for now, of course, I want to make the tier lists and the discussions available to most people, right? So, yeah, this is a future project. I hope you liked this tier list. I hope the reasoning was clear. And I wish you all a Merry Christmas. And yeah, we will see each other in the new year. Bye bye.